The bridge of the USS Defiance hummed with quiet energy. Admiral Kate Morrison stood before the massive viewing screen, her hands clasped behind her back. The stars outside looked peaceful, but she knew better. War had been raging for 3 years. Now, and humanity was tired of playing defense. Commander Rick Palmer walked up beside her. His uniform was crisp, but his eyes showed the strain of countless battles. "Admiral, Ambassador Grant is ready to send the message." Kate nodded slowly. "Good. It's time they understood what they're dealing with." On the lower deck of the bridge, Ambassador Lisa Grant sat at the communication console. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. She had delivered many messages during this war, but none as important as this one. The aliens had laughed at human diplomacy before. Today would be different. "Opening channel to the Zephyrian High Council," Grant announced. Her voice carried across the bridge, steady and calm. Every officer stopped what they were doing to listen. The screen flickered and showed the alien council chamber. 12 different species sat around a curved table that glowed with soft blue light. At the center sat Emperor Vexthari, his scaled face showing the arrogance that had started this war. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he recognized the human transmission. "Ah, the humans wish to speak again," Vexthari said in his translated voice. It sounded like grinding metal. "Have you finally come to surrender?" Several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. The crystalline representative's body chimed like broken glass. The void-touched delegate's shadowy form rippled. With amusement, Ambassador Grant's expression didn't change. She had expected this reaction. "Emperor Vexthari, representatives of the Galactic Empire, I bring you humanity's final message." "Final message?" The Emperor leaned forward in his floating chair. "Are you admitting defeat at last?" "No," Grant said simply. "This is your final warning." The council chamber fell silent. Even the translator system seemed to pause. Grant continued, her words clear and measured. "You have 72 hours to withdraw all Empire forces from human space. Every ship, every station, every soldier must leave our territory. This includes the colonies you have occupied on New Denver, Terra Nova, and the mining worlds of the Outer Ring." Emperor Vexthari's scales darkened with anger. "You dare make demands of us? Your primitive species has been at war with the Empire for 3 years and achieved nothing. We have conquered civilizations that were spacefaring when your ancestors were still living in caves." "That may be true," Grant replied. "But those civilizations were not human." The alien emperor's 4 eyes focused on the screen. "What makes you think you can threaten us? Our fleets outnumber yours 50 to 1. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced. What could you possibly do to harm the Empire?" Grant was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made even the human officers on the bridge feel cold. "We conquer, we consume. You have been warned." The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some aliens chattered in excitement, others hissed in anger. Emperor Vexthari raised one of his many arms for silence. "Foolish humans," he said. "They think they can frighten us with empty words. Admiral Vexkol, how many ships can you gather for the final assault?" Admiral Vexkol was a member of the warrior caste, his body covered in natural armor that had never known defeat. 10,000 ships, my emperor. The greatest fleet ever assembled. We will crush every human world and make an example of their species. Excellent. Begin preparations immediately." Back on the USS Defiance, the bridge crew watched their instruments carefully. Long-range sensors were picking up massive movement throughout Empire space. Captain John Hayes, monitoring communications from his position on the intelligence ship Vengeance, spoke through the comm system. "Admiral, we're detecting fleet movements across 17 systems. They're mobilizing everything they have." "Kate." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Just as we expected. How long until they reach human space?" "At their current speed, approximately 60 hours. "Perfect timing." Kate turned to Commander Palmer. "Signal Dr. Carter. Tell her to begin final preparations for Project Devour." Palmer's face went pale, but he nodded. Every officer on the bridge knew about Project Devour, though few knew the details. What they did know was terrifying enough. Deep in the ship's research levels, Dr. Amy Carter received the message. Her laboratory was filled with sealed containers, each one marked with warning symbols that would make seasoned soldiers nervous. Inside those containers were humanity's most carefully guarded secret. Carter had been working on the project for over a decade, long before the war began. When humanity first made contact with the Galactic Empire, the government had realized something important. The galaxy was full of civilizations that had grown soft through millions of years of peace and cooperation. Humanity was different. Humanity had spent its entire history at war with itself, and that experience had taught them lessons the aliens had never learned. "Begin activation sequence," Carter said to her team. Around the laboratory, dozens of scientists started their work. They moved with the precision of people who had practiced this moment countless times. The containers began to hum with energy. Inside them, microscopic machines started to wake up. These were not just weapons. They were something far more dangerous. They were designed to change everything they touched, to make it part of humanity's growing power. On the bridge, Admiral Morrison watched the readings from Carter's laboratory. The numbers meant nothing to most people, but she understood their significance. In less than 3 days, the galaxy would learn why humanity had survived and thrived on a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. "Admiral, Commander," Palmer said quietly. "Are we really going to do this? Once we start, there's no going back." Kate looked at him with eyes that had seen too many human colonies burned, too many human ships destroyed, too many human lives lost to alien arrogance. "Rick, they had their chance. We offered them peace, trade, friendship. They responded with conquest and slavery. They think we're just another species to be dominated." She paused, looking out at the stars. "They're about to learn the difference between humans and everyone else they've conquered." Across the Empire, alien fleets gathered with confidence. They had done this before with dozens of species. First came the overwhelming show of force, then the quick surrender, then the integration into the Empire as a subject race. It was a pattern they had repeated so many times it had become routine. But in the shadows of space, in places the aliens had never thought to look, other preparations were being made. For 3 years, every human ship that had been destroyed, every human colony that had been captured, every human prisoner that had been taken had served a purpose the aliens never suspected. Humanity had been learning. More than that, humanity had been preparing. And now, with the Empire's greatest fleet moving toward human space, it was time to show the galaxy what humans really were. The countdown had begun. In 72 hours, either humanity would be extinct or the galaxy would never be the same. Again. Ambassador Grant filed her final report and prepared for what was to come. She had delivered humanity's last diplomatic message. From now on, humanity would speak in a language the Empire would understand perfectly. the language of absolute. Victory. The Zephyrian armada dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of metal and fire. 10,000 ships arranged themselves in perfect battle formation around the human colony of New Denver. Their hulls gleamed with alien metals that had been forged in the hearts of dying stars. Weapons that could crack planets charged with deadly energy. Fleet Admiral Vexcole stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. His armored body radiated confidence as he watched the human defenses through the viewing screen. 300 human ships waited in orbit around New Denver. They looked small and primitive compared to his mighty fleet. "Pathetic," Vexcole said to his second-in-command. "I expected more from the species that dared to threaten the Empire." Commander Zexara, a member of the telepathic Mindweaver race, nodded agreement. Her thoughts touched the minds of her fellow officers, sharing their certainty of victory. "Their ships are outnumbered 30-1. This will be over quickly." On the human side, Commodore Steve Wilson watched the alien fleet through his own screens. The bridge of his ship, the HMS Determination, was quiet, except for the hum of computers and the steady breathing of his crew. Unlike the aliens, the humans showed no signs of panic or fear. "That's a lot of ships," said Colonel Maria Santos from her position at the tactical station. She commanded the Marine forces for the entire system, and her job was to coordinate ground defenses if the aliens made it past the fleet. "It's exactly what we expected," Wilson replied calmly. "Signal all ships. Begin Phase 1. Across the human fleet, captains received their orders. They had trained for this moment for years, running simulations and practicing maneuvers that seemed impossible. Now it was time to put theory into practice. The battle began when Admiral Vexcole gave the order to attack. Thousands of alien weapons fired at once, filling space with deadly energy beams and plasma bolts. The light was so bright it could be seen from the surface of New Denver, where millions of human colonists watched from their shelters. But something was wrong. The human ships weren't where they should be. Captain Danny Clark's destroyer squadron had been in the center of the human formation just moments before. Now they were somehow behind the alien fleet, their weapons already firing at the surprised Zephyrian ships. Other human vessels seemed to flicker in and out of existence, appearing in places they couldn't possibly reach so quickly. "How are they moving like that?" Vexcole demanded. His sensors showed human ships in 6 different locations at once, but that was impossible. No known technology could allow such rapid movement. The truth was something the aliens couldn't understand. For 3 years, humanity had been studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. Every captured human ship had carried hidden scanners. Every human prisoner had been equipped with microscopic recording devices. Humanity had learned not just how alien technology worked, but how to make it work better. The human ships weren't just fast. They were using modified alien jump drives that had been improved with human engineering. Where alien technology was elegant and efficient, human modifications were brutal and effective. They pushed the drives far beyond their safe limits, achieving speeds that should have torn the ships apart. But human ships were built differently than alien vessels. They were designed to survive damage that would destroy other ships. Every human vessel was built like a weapon of war, because humans understood something the peaceful aliens had forgotten. In a real fight, the side that could take more punishment usually won. Lieutenant Commander Julie Adams was stationed on a small human outpost at the edge of the system. Her job was to coordinate the defense platforms that floated silently in space, disguised as asteroids and space debris. These platforms had been built over the past 2 years, hidden in places the aliens had never bothered to search. "Activation code confirmed," Adams said into her communicator. "Beginning Phase 2. Throughout the solar system, millions of small objects began to change. What the aliens had thought were asteroids and comets started to unfold like metal flowers. Hidden weapons platforms revealed themselves, their guns already trained on the alien fleet. But these weren't ordinary weapons. Each platform contained technology that the aliens had never seen before. Human engineers had taken the basic principles of alien matter conversion and pushed them to their limits. The platforms didn't just fire energy beams. They fired clouds of microscopic machines that could eat through alien armor and convert it into more weapons. The first alien ship to be hit by these nanite clouds simply disappeared. One moment it was a mighty dreadnought bristling with weapons. The next moment it was a cloud of glittering dust that quickly reformed into dozens of human fighter craft. Admiral Vexcol watched in horror as his fleet began to shrink. Every ship that was destroyed seemed to create more human vessels. It was like fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. "Impossible," he whispered. "What kind of weapons are these?" His science officer, a creature that looked like a walking crystal, chimed with panic. "Admiral, the destroyed matter isn't being destroyed. It's being converted. The humans are turning our ships into their ships." On the surface of New Denver, General Peter Young watched the battle through his command center's screens. His ground forces were ready for the alien landing that he knew would come. But they weren't just ready to fight. They were ready to demonstrate humanity's most terrifying capability. The first alien dropships broke through the orbital battle and headed for the planet's surface. They carried thousands of elite Zephyrian warriors, soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds. Their weapons were designed to cut through any known armor. Their training was perfect. But when they landed and began their assault on the human defenses, something went wrong. The human soldiers they killed didn't stay dead. Private Jake Miller was the first to fall, struck down by an alien plasma rifle. But instead of dying, his body began to change. Microscopic machines in his bloodstream activated, repairing the damage and improving his body at the same time. He stood up, his eyes now glowing with mechanical light, and returned fire with a weapon that had been built from the alien rifle that had killed him. Every human soldier carried nanite injectors in their blood. When they were wounded or killed, the machines activated, converting alien weapons and equipment into improved human technology. The soldiers themselves became something more than human, their bodies enhanced with alien technology that had been redesigned according to human principles. The alien warriors found themselves fighting an enemy that couldn't be killed, that grew, stronger with every wound, that turned their own weapons against them. It was like fighting their own nightmares made real. General Young smiled as he watched his enhanced soldiers push the aliens back to their landing ships. "Phase 3 is working perfectly," he reported to Commodore Wilson. "Ground forces are performing beyond expectations." In space, the battle was turning into a rout. The mighty Zephyrian fleet that had arrived with such confidence was now less than half its original size. The human fleet, meanwhile, had somehow doubled in number, their ranks filled with ships that had been built from converted alien matter. Admiral Vexcol realized that he was facing something he had never encountered before. This wasn't just a military defeat. This was something far worse. The humans weren't just winning, they were consuming his fleet, making it part of their own power. "All ships retreat," he ordered, his voice filled with a fear he had never known before. Jump to hyperspace immediately. But even retreat wasn't simple. As his ships tried to escape, they found that their hyperspace drives had been infected with human nanites. Instead of jumping to safety, many ships simply exploded as their own technology turned against them. Only 3,000 alien ships managed to escape from the Battle of New Denver. 7,000 had been destroyed or converted. It was the greatest defeat in the Empire's history, and it had happened at what should have been a minor human outpost. As the surviving alien ships limped back to their home territories, they carried with them reports that terrified the Empire. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something that turned the Empire's own strength against itself. Emperor Vexithari received the reports with growing dread. For the first time in his long life, he began to understand what the human ambassador had meant when she said, "We conquer, we consume." The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had thought they were fighting a war, but humanity had been preparing for something much more ambitious. They had been preparing to remake the galaxy in their own image. Emperor Vexithari sat in his throne room, staring at reports that made no sense. The holographic displays showed something impossible. Human fleets were attacking 27 different worlds at the same time, not small raids or scouting missions. Full-scale invasions with thousands of ships each. How? He asked his military advisors. How can they be in so many places at once? Our intelligence said they only had a few hundred ships total. General Kexmoth, supreme commander of the Empire's armies, shuffled his insect-like wings nervously. My Emperor, we believe they have been hiding their true strength. The fleets attacking our worlds are larger than anything we've seen from them before. But that wasn't the whole truth, and everyone in the room knew it. The real truth was far more disturbing. Light years away, Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching her fleet emerge from hyperspace near the industrial world of Kithara Prime. Her ships moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. But these weren't the same ships that had fought at New Denver. "Admiral," Commander Rick Palmer said quietly, "are you sure about this? Once we release the nanites on a populated world, there's no going back." Kate's expression was hard as steel. "They had their chance, Rick. Every human colony they burned, every human life they took, every time they laughed at our offers of peace. They made their choice." She turned to face the communication console. "Dr. Carter, begin the conversion process." Dr. Amy Carter's voice came through the speakers from her laboratory ship. "Understood, Admiral. Releasing the Gray Swarm now." From the human fleet, thousands of small pods launched toward Kithara Prime. To anyone watching, they looked like standard missiles or probes. But inside each pod was something that would change everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare. The pods entered the planet's atmosphere and spread out across the continents. When they opened, clouds of microscopic machines poured out, so small they were invisible to the naked eye. These nanites were humanity's greatest creation and their most terrible weapon. The Gray Swarm didn't destroy things. It improved them. The first target was a massive alien factory that produced starship engines. The nanites flowed through the facility like water, touching every piece of equipment, every computer, every worker. But instead of killing or destroying, they began to rebuild. The alien workers found that their tools worked better than ever before. The machines produced parts with impossible precision. The computers processed information at speeds that shouldn't have been possible. Everything became more efficient, more productive, more perfect, but it was no longer alien technology. It was human technology. Commander Nick Brown led the ground assault on Cathara Prime's capital city. His Marines moved through streets filled with panicking aliens, but they weren't there to kill. They were there to convert. "Remember," Brown told his soldiers over the radio, "we're not conquerors. We're liberators. These people just don't know it yet." The aliens who tried to fight found their weapons turning against them. The nanites that filled the air converted every piece of alien technology they touched, turning enemy equipment into human tools. Alien soldiers watched in horror as their own guns began firing on their comrades. But the aliens who surrendered found something different. The nanites didn't hurt them. Instead, they offered them something they had never experienced before: connection, understanding, purpose. Dr. Helen Davis worked alongside Amy Carter from her research vessel, monitoring the conversion process. Her screens showed the nanite, clouds spreading across the planet like a silver web. Everywhere they touched, alien technology became human technology. More importantly, alien minds began to connect with the growing human network. "Conversion rate is at 60% and rising," Davis reported. "No significant resistance from the population. Most are accepting integration voluntarily." That was the secret the Empire didn't understand. Humanity wasn't just conquering worlds. They were offering the alien populations something their own government never had. They were offering them the chance to be part of something greater than themselves. The aliens who joined the human network found that their lives suddenly had meaning, their work mattered, their thoughts and ideas were valued. They were no longer just subjects of a distant emperor. They were partners in humanity's grand design. Within 18 hours, Cathara Prime had been completely transformed. The planet's factories were producing human warships at a rate that should have been impossible. The alien population was not, only cooperating with their new human administrators, but actively helping to improve the conversion process. Captain Tony Miller's stealth fleet achieved an even more important victory. Using hyperspace routes that the aliens had never discovered, routes that had been mapped by human exploration ships over the past 3 years, Miller's ships appeared inside the Empire's capital system without warning. The Zephyrian homeworld was protected by massive defense platforms and patrol fleets, but all of those defenses were designed to stop attacks from outside the system. No one had ever imagined that enemy ships could appear directly next to the planet itself. Miller's ships were small and fast, designed for stealth rather than heavy combat, but they carried something more valuable than weapons. They carried the truth. As Miller's ships flew past the alien defense stations, they released clouds of nanites that were different from the ones used on other worlds. These nanites weren't designed to convert technology, they were designed to convert information. Every communication device on the planet began receiving the same message. Every computer screen, every radio, every holographic display showed the same images. The aliens saw their own government's secret files, their own military's classified reports, their own emperor's private communications. They learned that their government had been lying to them about the war. They learned that humanity had offered peace and trade, and that their leaders had chosen conquest instead. They learned that the Empire had planned to enslave humanity just as they had enslaved dozens of other species. But most importantly, they learned what humanity was offering them in return. The humans weren't interested in ruling over alien subjects. They wanted partners. They wanted to share their technology, their knowledge, their vision of a galaxy where every species could reach its full potential. On worlds across the Empire, the same pattern repeated itself. Human fleets would arrive. Their nanite clouds would convert local technology, and the alien populations would be offered a choice. They could fight for leaders who saw them as expendable resources, or they could join a civilization that valued their contributions. Most chose to join humanity. Emperor Vexithari watched his empire crumble in real time. World after world sent messages of surrender, but they weren't surrendering to conquest. They were volunteering to become part of something new. How is this possible? He demanded of his advisors. How can they be converting our people so quickly? What kind of mind control are they using? But General Kexmoth had a different theory, one that terrified him more than any weapon. My Emperor, I don't think they're using mind control at all. I think our people are choosing to join them willingly. The Emperor's scales darkened with rage. Impossible. No species would choose to betray their own kind. Unless, the general said quietly, they don't see it as betrayal. Unless they see it as improvement. Back on the USS Defiance, Admiral Morrison received reports from across the galaxy. 27 worlds had been successfully converted to human control. Alien fleets were surrendering without fighting. Entire systems were requesting to join the human network voluntarily. Admiral, Commander Palmer said, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. The President wants to know if we're ready to begin the final phase. Kate nodded. Signal Dr. Carter and Dr. Davis. Tell them to activate Protocol Consume across all converted systems. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. Across dozens of star systems, the nanite networks that humanity had established began to connect with each other. What had been separate conversion efforts became part of a single, galaxy-spanning organism. Every converted world became a node in humanity's growing consciousness. The aliens who had joined the network found themselves connected not just to humans, but to each other in ways they had never imagined. A scientist on one world could share ideas instantly with an engineer on another. A teacher could pass knowledge directly to students on dozens of different planets. For the first time in galactic history, different species were truly working, together as equals. But for those who still resisted, the message was clear. Humanity wasn't just another military force. They were evolution itself, and they were offering the galaxy a choice: evolve with them or be left behind. The Empire's time was ending. Humanity's time had begun. The crystalline hierarchs were the first to realize the true scope of what humanity was doing. Their diamond-like bodies could process information at speeds that made them the Empire's greatest strategists. When they saw the patterns of human expansion, they understood something that terrified them. "This is not conquest," announced Prime Crystal Zarthek to the Emergency Council meeting. His voice rang like singing glass through the chambers. "This is consumption. They are not defeating us. They are digesting us." The other Alliance species listened with growing fear. The void. Touched, ancient beings of living shadow rippled with anxiety. The Watchers, who had observed the galaxy for millions of years, shared knowledge that chilled everyone present. "We have seen this before," spoke Elder Watcher Nexvioth, his ancient voice carrying memories of civilizations long dead. "On distant worlds, in other galaxies, species that consume and convert everything they touch. We called them the Devourers. We thought they were extinct." Emperor Vexithari's remaining scales turned pale gray. "Are you saying the humans are related to these Devourers?" "No," the Watcher replied. "The humans are something worse. The Devourers destroyed what they consumed. The humans improve it." The alliance that formed that day was the largest military force in galactic history. 15 different species, many of whom had been enemies for centuries, put aside their differences to fight what they saw as a threat to all life in the galaxy, but they were already too late. Colonel Jack Turner's Marine Corps had been busy on the occupied worlds. His soldiers didn't look like the humans they had been before the war began. The nanites in their blood had changed them, made them stronger, faster, more resilient. But the most important change was in their minds. They could see the connections now. Every alien they captured, every piece of technology they converted, every world they liberated became part of a growing network of consciousness that spanned light years. They were no longer individual soldiers. They were cells in humanity's expanding organism. The alien prisoners brought to Turner's facilities underwent what humanity called the integration protocol. It wasn't torture or brainwashing. It was something far more sophisticated. The nanites would connect to the aliens' nervous system, not to control their thoughts, but to share them. The aliens would suddenly understand what the humans were trying to build. They would see the vision of a galaxy where every species worked together, where knowledge was shared freely, where no one was left behind. Most of them chose to join voluntarily. Captain Zexara had been one of the Empire's most loyal officers, a mind-weaver whose telepathic abilities made her invaluable for military operations. When she was captured at the Battle of Rigel Station, she expected to be executed or imprisoned. Instead, she found herself in a comfortable room, talking with a human scientist named Dr. Lisa Murphy. "We don't want to change who you are," Murphy explained patiently. "We want to help you become who you could be. Your telepathic abilities are incredible, but you've only been using a fraction of their potential. The nanites that connected to Zexara's mind didn't take control. They offered her something she had never experienced before: connection to thousands of other minds, both human and alien, all working together toward common goals." For the first time in her life, Zexara wasn't alone in her thoughts. When she emerged from the integration process 3 days later, she was still herself. But she was also something more. She was part of humanity's collective consciousness, and that consciousness was part of her, General Lisa Murphy, who had been promoted to oversee the integration of new species, watched from her command center as the process repeated itself across dozens of worlds. Every alien who joined the network made humanity stronger, not just in numbers, but in capability. The crystalline beings brought computational power that surpassed anything humans had built. The void touched contributed understanding of energy, manipulation that revolutionized human technology. The Watchers shared knowledge accumulated over millions of years. Humanity wasn't just conquering the galaxy, they were becoming the galaxy. The breakthrough came when Commander Paul Green's research team successfully infiltrated the Empire's quantum communication network. This wasn't simple hacking or code breaking. This was something far more ambitious. Human nanites had been spreading through the Empire's infrastructure for months, carried on captured ships, integrated into surrendered equipment, hidden in the supplies that the Empire had taken from human colonies. Now, all of those nanites activated at once. Every communication device in the Empire began speaking with a human voice. Every computer screen showed human messages. Every holographic display projected human images. But more than that, the network itself began to change. The quantum channels that carried information across the galaxy started routing through human-controlled nodes. Alien messages were intercepted, analyzed, and sometimes modified before reaching their destinations. The Empire's military commanders found themselves receiving contradictory orders. Supply convoys were redirected to human-controlled worlds. Fleet movements were coordinated by human strategists who knew exactly when and where alien ships would arrive. Emperor Vexithari realized that his own palace communications were compromised when he received a personal message from Admiral Kate Morrison. "Your Majesty," the message began, using perfect court protocol that showed how completely humanity had penetrated his government. "We regret that it has come to this. We offered you partnership. We offered you peace. You chose war, and now you must face the consequences." The message continued with detailed information about the Emperor's personal finances, his secret military projects, his private communications with other alien leaders. Humanity knew everything about him, had known it for months, maybe years. "We are not your enemies," the message concluded. "We are your future. The choice is yours. Join us willingly, or be integrated by force." Dr. Amy Carter stood in her laboratory aboard the research vessel, watching as her greatest creation reached its final phase. Project Devour had been designed not just to convert matter and energy, but to convert reality itself. The nanite swarms that had spread across the galaxy were more than just machines. They were instruments of transformation that operated on levels the aliens couldn't comprehend. They didn't just change what things were made of. They changed what things could become. "Activating final phase," Carter announced to the human fleet commanders. "All networks, all systems, all converted worlds coming online simultaneously. Across dozens of star systems, the nanite networks that humanity had established began to connect with each other. What had been separate installations became part of a single, galaxy-spanning entity. Every converted world became a processing node in humanity's growing consciousness. But the final phase went beyond even that. The nanites began converting empty space itself, creating invisible networks of transformed vacuum that could carry information and energy at faster than light speeds. Space itself became part of humanity's extended nervous system. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Human ships began appearing in locations they couldn't possibly reach. Human communications arrived before they were sent. Human consciousness began manifesting in places where no humans had ever been. The aliens fighting humanity's expansion found themselves fighting not just human soldiers and ships, but the very fabric of space-time that had been converted to serve human purposes. Admiral Vexcol, commanding the Empire's last great fleet, watched in horror as his ships began malfunctioning. But they weren't breaking down. They were improving. The nanites that had infected them were upgrading their systems, making them more efficient, more powerful, more connected. His own crew began reporting that their equipment was working better than ever before. Their weapons were more accurate. Their shields were stronger. Their computers were faster. But the improvements came with a price. The ships were no longer truly under alien control. They were becoming part of humanity's network, their crews gradually integrating into the collective consciousness that was spreading across the galaxy. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "I'm receiving a message from the human fleet. They're offering us terms of surrender." Vexcol looked at the message with surprise. It wasn't a demand for unconditional surrender. It was an invitation. "Join us," the message read. "Keep your rank, keep your crew, keep your ships. But fight for something better than an empire that sees you as expendable. Fight for a civilization that values what you can contribute." Around him, His officers were already beginning to change. The nanites in the ship's air supply were connecting to their nervous systems, showing them visions of what the galaxy could become under human guidance. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vexcol began to question whether he was fighting for the right side. The Empire's last great alliance was falling apart before it had even begun its attack. Ship by ship, world by world, species by species, the galaxy was choosing humanity over its old masters. The Age of the Galactic Empire was ending. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months after humanity's final warning, Emperor Vexathari stood in what had once been his throne room. The chamber looked the same, with its floating crystal formations and holographic displays. But everything had changed. The crystals now pulsed with soft blue light that seemed almost alive. The displays showed information from across the galaxy, but it was information that served humanity's purposes now. The Emperor himself wore robes that looked identical to his traditional garments, but they were woven with microscopic machines that connected him to the vast network that humanity had built. He was still the Emperor, still the ceremonial leader of his people, but he served a new master now. Admiral Kate Morrison walked into the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She moved with the confidence of someone who had won the greatest war in galactic history, but her expression showed no cruelty or arrogance. She looked like what she was, a leader who had done what was necessary to protect her people. "Your Majesty," she said, using the proper forms of address that the integrated alien protocols had provided. "The integration of the former Empire territories is complete. All worlds have successfully joined the human network." Vexathari nodded slowly. His 4 eyes, once filled with imperial arrogance, now showed something different: understanding, even gratitude. "Admiral Morrison, my people are reporting increased productivity, improved health, and greater satisfaction with their lives than they have known in centuries. How is this possible?" Kate smiled slightly. "Your people were never the problem, Your Majesty. The system was the problem. You were taught to rule through fear and domination. We prefer cooperation and mutual benefit." The truth was more complex than that, but the results spoke for themselves. Across the former empire, alien populations were thriving under human administration. Crime rates had dropped to almost zero. Productivity had increased dramatically. Scientific advancement was happening at a pace that seemed impossible, but most importantly, the aliens were happy. Captain Sarah Logan stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Zephyria Prime, watching the planet's transformation. Through the transparent walls, the world's cities sparkled with new energy, their buildings enhanced with human technology that made them both more beautiful and more efficient. Below, millions of aliens and humans worked together on projects that would have been impossible just months before. Zephyrian architects collaborated with human engineers to design structures that combined the best of both cultures. Crystalline scientists shared their computational abilities with human researchers to solve problems that had puzzled both species for generations. "It's remarkable," said her companion, former Admiral Vexcol, who now served as Logan's second-in-command. 6 months ago, I would have died before working with humans. Now I cannot imagine working without them." Logan nodded. "That's what happens when you stop seeing cooperation as weakness and start seeing it as strength." Vexcol's transformation was typical of what had happened throughout the former empire. The nanites that connected alien minds to the human network didn't erase their personalities or their cultures. Instead, they showed them new possibilities, new ways of thinking about their place in the galaxy. The aliens discovered that being part of something larger than themselves didn't make them smaller. It made them greater than they had ever been alone. Dr. Helen Davis worked in her new laboratory on the planet's surface, surrounded by equipment that combined human innovation with alien capabilities. Her team included researchers from a dozen different species, all connected through the network that allowed them to share ideas instantly. The integration process continues to exceed expectations, she reported to Admiral Morrison during their daily communication. We're seeing not just cooperation between species, but genuine fusion of capabilities. Human creativity combined with crystalline computational power, void-touched energy manipulation enhanced by human engineering, watcher knowledge applied through human practical methods. The network that humanity had built was more than just a communication system. It was a new form of consciousness that included all the species that had joined it. Every individual maintained their own identity while contributing to a collective intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. But the most remarkable discovery was that this collective consciousness was still growing. Commander Rick Palmer, now promoted to admiral and commanding his own fleet, stood on the bridge of his new flagship as it prepared to leave the galaxy. Behind him, dozens of massive ships waited in formation. These vessels were unlike anything that had existed before the war. They were built from matter that had been converted by humanity's nanites, their hulls incorporating materials from dozens of different worlds and species. Their crews included humans, Zephyrians, crystallines, void-touched, watchers, and representatives of every species that had joined the network. But most importantly, the ships themselves were alive. The nanites that built them had created vessels that could think, adapt, and grow. They were not just tools. They were partners in humanity's next great adventure. "Admiral Palmer," came a voice from the ship's communication system. It was the vessel itself speaking, its consciousness a fusion of human artificial intelligence and alien computational methods. "Long-range sensors are detecting structured signals from the Andromeda Galaxy, possible signs of technological civilization." Palmer smiled. "Excellent. Set course for the galactic edge. It's time to see what's waiting for us out there." The ships that left the Milky Way carried with them the combined knowledge and capabilities of every species that humanity had integrated. They were not conquerors setting out to dominate new worlds. They were explorers and teachers, ready to offer other civilizations the same choice that humanity had offered the Galactic Empire. Back on Earth, President Karen Walsh addressed the galaxy from the orbital command center that coordinated the vast network of human-controlled worlds. Her message was broadcast to every integrated planet, every allied species, every consciousness that was part of humanity's growing collective. 6 months ago, we gave the Galactic Empire a final warning, she began. We told them that we conquer, we consume. Today, I want to explain what those words really meant. The display behind her showed images from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds where alien populations now lived in freedom and prosperity. Crystalline hive cities that sparkled with new energy and purpose. Void-touched realms where shadow beings worked alongside human engineers to bend the laws of physics. We conquer fear with understanding. We conquer hatred with cooperation. We conquer isolation with connection. We consume ignorance and replace it with knowledge. We consume despair and replace it with hope. We consume division and replace it with unity. The president paused, looking directly into the camera that would carry her words to billions of beings across the galaxy. We are humanity. But we are more than that now. We are every species that has chosen to join us, every individual who has decided to be part of something greater than themselves. We are the future of conscious life in this galaxy. She gestured to the display, which now showed Admiral Palmer's fleet disappearing into the void between galaxies. And now we take that future to the stars beyond our own, not as conquerors, but as teachers, not as destroyers, but as builders. We will find other civilizations, other species, other forms of consciousness, and we will offer them the same choice we offered the Empire. The message concluded with words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Join us willingly and discover what you can become. Resist us and learn that resistance is not futile. It is simply temporary. We are humanity. We conquer, we consume, we transform, and we are just getting started. In the depths of space, heading toward distant galaxies, Admiral Palmer's fleet carried that message to civilizations that had never heard of Earth, never encountered humans, never imagined that consciousness could expand beyond the boundaries of individual species. They would learn. The galaxy that humanity left behind was not the same galaxy they had found when they first reached for the stars. It was better. It was unified. It was alive with possibilities that no single species could have achieved alone. And in the vast network of consciousness that connected every world, every ship, every individual who had chosen to be part of humanity's vision, new ideas continued to flow. New discoveries were made every day. New forms of art and beauty and understanding emerged from the fusion of countless different minds. Humanity had kept its promise. They had conquered. They had consumed. They had transformed everything they touched. And they were not finished. The universe was vast, filled with countless civilizations waiting to discover what they could become when they stopped fighting each other and started working together. Humanity would find them all, and they would offer them the greatest gift that conscious beings could give each other: the chance to become part of something infinitely greater than themselves. The age of isolated species was ending. The age of unified consciousness had begun, and it would spread to every star in the universe.